Ryan Sterling, a titan of the New York tech scene, was a master strategist in the boardroom, cool under pressure, but love life? A disaster. His partners, his old money family, oh, they were all breathing down his neck. Whispers about his bachelor status were turning into boardroom ultimatums. They wanted stability, a family man at the helm, not some playboy CEO. Ryan knew he had to pull a rabbit out of his hat, and fast. Then, in a bustling downtown cafe, amidst the clatter of cups and hushed conversations, he saw her. A young woman, fiery and cornered, locked in a tense standoff with a guy who screamed debt collector. Her clothes were simple, but her spine was ramrod straight, a mix of grit and desperation in her posture as she stood her ground. "I just need a little more time, please," she pleaded, her voice tight with emotion, a soft undertone in her American accent adding to her vulnerability. When the collector finally retreated, defeated, Ryan, a plan sparking in his mind, approached her. "You look like you're having a rough day," he said, his voice calm, direct. She turned, eyes flashing suspicion, but held her ground. "And you look like you're about to make it worse," she shot back, a hint of defiance in her voice. Ryan wasn't deterred. He slid into the opposite chair. "Ryan Sterling," he introduced himself. "And maybe, just maybe, I have a proposal that could solve both our problems." She arched an eyebrow, skepticism dripping from her tone. "Jessica Davis," she retorted, "and unless you're offering a handout, I'm not interested." "Not charity," Ryan corrected smoothly. "A business proposition. I need someone to play my fiancé. Big event. And I'm willing to pay handsomely." Jessica stared, speechless for a beat. "Fiancé? Are you serious?" "Deadly serious." Ryan leaned in, intensity in his eyes. "Pay off your debts, plus a substantial bonus if you pretend to be my fiancé for a few weeks. Solves my partner problem, solves your financial one, from what I gather." Jessica remained silent, her mind racing, weighing the sheer audacity of the offer against the crushing weight of her reality. It was insane, yet desperate times. "Terms?" she finally asked, her voice cautious. "Accompany me to a few social events. Act like you're madly in love. Totally convincing fiancé material. In return, debts vanish, bonus lands in your account. No strings attached beyond the performance. Strictly business," Ryan clarified, aiming for transparency. Jessica took a deep breath. This could be her lifeline. "All right," she agreed, a hint of steel in her voice. "I'm in. One condition, no lies outside the script. I keep my dignity." "Deal," Ryan said, a faint smile playing on his lips, extending his hand. Jessica gripped it firmly, a flicker of vulnerability in her determined gaze that Ryan hadn't anticipated. As their hands clasped, neither could have foreseen the whirlwind they were about to unleash. Jessica's life flipped upside down. One minute, she was drowning in debt. The next, she was plunged into Ryan Sterling's world of penthouse offices and designer clothes. His office was a glass and steel monument to success, a stark contrast to her cramped Brooklyn apartment. "They'll spot a fake a mile away if you don't look the part," Ryan stated, handing her a stack of glossy magazines. "Fashion, etiquette, you need to breathe this world." Jessica scoffed, a dry laugh escaping her lips. "Magazines are going to turn me into a socialite overnight? Please." "Not magic, Jessica," Ryan countered, a hint of amusement in his voice. "But in business, perception is everything. Act like you belong, and they'll believe you do." The crash course began. Ryan was relentless, determined to mold Jessica into a believable fiancé. Expensive restaurants became classrooms for table manners. Stylists descended, transforming Jessica's wardrobe. But beneath the surface, Jessica felt like a fraud. "This whole thing feels like one giant lie," she confessed one evening, draped in a gown that cost more than her rent. "And I am terrible at lying." Ryan paused, studying her. "It's not a lie, Jessica. It's acting. Think of it as a role. We're creating a narrative." She looked at him, a thoughtful expression on her face. "And you, Ryan, ever lose yourself in your own roles? Forget who you really are under all the CEO armor?" Ryan hesitated, surprised by the question's depth. "Maybe," he admitted quietly. "Sometimes, playing the part everyone expects is easier than being yourself." Days blurred into a whirlwind of etiquette lessons, fashion fittings, and forced smiles. Jessica was improving, the awkwardness slowly fading, replaced by a newfound confidence. Her conversations with Ryan, however, started to shift, less about the deal, more real. She teased him about his perpetual seriousness, and he, in turn, found a lighter side he thought he'd buried years ago. During one training session, Ryan looked at Jessica, really looked, as if seeing her for the first time. "You're actually good at this," he said, the usual critical edge absent from his voice. "Keep this up, and no one will suspect a thing." Jessica managed a smile, but her eyes held a mix of sadness and defiance. "Funny," she said softly, "because I still feel like an imposter in a world that will never truly accept me." Ryan opened his mouth to respond, then stopped. There was more to Jessica than just debt and desperation, a strength, an authenticity that was starting to chip away at his carefully constructed walls. He was beginning to see a woman, not just a hired actress. The night of the first big event arrived too fast. The ballroom glittered, chandeliers casting dazzling reflections on the sea of elegant gowns and tuxedos. Ryan and Jessica made their entrance, a ripple of whispers following them like a wave. This was Jessica's trial by fire, her chance to prove herself to Ryan and to herself. "Relax," Ryan murmured, his hand lightly touching her back. "Remember the plan. Smile, confidence." Jessica took a deep breath, mentally running through everything they'd rehearsed. Every gesture, every smile felt calculated, practiced. Inside, she felt like a fraud, a cheap imitation in a room of originals. But as the night unfolded, a strange thing happened. Jessica found her footing. She navigated conversations, laughed at the right moments, even parried questions about their relationship with practiced ease. Ryan's partners, the investors, seemed genuinely impressed. Then came the unexpected curveball. A request for Jessica to give a brief speech. Panic flared. This was not in the script. Jessica froze, her carefully constructed composure threatening to crumble. Ryan looked at her, a silent message of encouragement in his eyes, a flicker of something else she couldn't quite decipher. Jessica stepped forward, a nervous smile playing on her lips. "I'm not great with prepared speeches," she began, her voice surprisingly steady despite the tremor in her hands. "So, I'll be honest." Every eye in the room was fixed on her. "Being here tonight with Ryan," she continued, "it's surreal. And what I've learned from him," she paused, searching for the right words, "is that the truly strong people aren't perfect. They're the ones who own their flaws." A hush fell over the room, broken only by Jessica's voice. "Ryan built his company through sheer grit and brilliance, yes, but what really matters is how he values people. He taught me that the greatest luxury isn't wealth or power. It's being yourself." Silence hung in the air for a beat, then applause erupted, filling the ballroom. Ryan watched, stunned, genuinely moved. It wasn't the polished, predictable speech he expected. It was raw, honest, and resonated with a power he hadn't anticipated. Jessica returned to his side, still buzzing with adrenaline. Ryan leaned in, his voice low, sincere. "You were incredible," he whispered, a sincerity she hadn't heard before. Jessica smiled, a mix of relief and confusion swirling within her. "I just spoke the truth," she replied, her gaze meeting his for a fleeting moment, a connection that blurred the lines of their performance. As the evening wore on, something shifted within Ryan. Jessica, with her disarming honesty, her simple grace, was cracking through his carefully constructed defenses. He saw her not as a hired actress, but as someone who unintentionally was dismantling his walls brick by brick. Later, in a quieter corner of the ballroom, Ryan spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I never expected you to move people like that tonight, Jessica, including me." She laughed softly, shaking her head. "You live in a world of appearances, Ryan. Maybe it's time you tried being real too." Ryan fell silent, her words echoing in his mind. Maybe she was right. Maybe he'd been hiding for so long he'd forgotten what genuine felt like. And somehow, this woman, who had stumbled into his life by chance, was pulling it to the surface. After the event, Jessica returned to her small apartment, a strange unease settling over her. The borrowed elegance of the evening still clung to her, a stark reminder of a world so tantalizingly close, yet impossibly distant. Her apartment, worn but familiar, felt both comforting and confining. Jessica was caught between two worlds, the line between reality and pretense blurring with every passing day. The next day, over coffee in his office, Ryan noticed the shadow in Jessica's eyes. "What's going on, Jessica?" he asked, genuine concern in his voice. "You've been different since last night." She looked up, the inner turmoil evident in her expression. "It's just, I feel like I'm living two lives," she admitted, her voice low. "In your world, I'm this sophisticated woman, confident, poised, but then I come back here and I'm just me, and they don't fit." Ryan listened, a new understanding dawning. He hadn't considered the emotional toll this charade was taking on her. You know, he said gently, you're more authentic than most people I know in my world. That's why everyone was so impressed with you. Jessica let out a bitter laugh. Authentic? I'm pretending to be someone I'm not to help you land a deal. It's all a fake, Ryan. He leaned forward, his gaze intense. Maybe it's fake to everyone else. But when you spoke last night, that wasn't an act. That was real. More real than anyone else in that room. She looked at him, surprised by the raw sincerity in his voice. Something was shifting in Ryan, and it both intrigued and terrified her. She was starting to realize the pretense wasn't just about fooling his partners. It was about something deeper, something unsettlingly personal. It's not just about fooling them, is it? Jessica said, more to herself than to him. It's about fooling ourselves, pretending we're in control when we're completely lost. Ryan didn't respond immediately. For the first time in years, he felt vulnerable, exposed. Jessica was peeling back layers he hadn't even acknowledged existed, layers that hid a yearning for something more than just success, something he wasn't sure he deserved, yet she seemed to see it. Maybe I am starting to see things differently, Ryan admitted, his voice barely audible. Maybe you're showing me a side of life I've been too afraid to look at. The connection between them was deepening, the carefully constructed wall between business arrangement and genuine emotion crumbling. Jessica stood, a sudden need for space washing over her. I need some time, Ryan, she said quietly, to figure out where I fit in all this. I understand, he replied, respecting her need for distance. But as she turned to leave, a chilling thought settled in his mind. Was it already too late to turn back, not just for Jessica, but for himself? One quiet evening, Ryan invited Jessica to his penthouse. A thank you for her efforts, he insisted, nothing formal. Jessica accepted hesitantly. Something had changed in Ryan since that night, a shift she couldn't ignore, yet felt unsettlingly close to. They settled on the balcony, the city lights twinkling like a scattered galaxy. Ryan poured wine, the silence stretching between them, comfortable yet charged. I needed this, Ryan said, breaking the stillness. Something away from the noise. Nice to be with someone who doesn't want something from me, except honesty. Jessica raised an eyebrow, a wry smile playing on her lips. Honesty? Funny word coming from the guy who hired me to lie for him. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. Point taken, but I feel like since you came into my life, I've had to be more honest, mostly with myself. Jessica looked at him, a mix of curiosity and vulnerability in her eyes. Who are you really, Ryan? Without the masks, the expectations, the CEO persona, who's the man underneath? Ryan hesitated, swirling the wine in his glass, searching for words. I think, for a long time, I was just what everyone else wanted me to be, he began, his voice low, introspective. The dutiful son, the ruthless leader. I never stopped to ask myself what I wanted. Jessica nodded, understanding more than he knew. I get it, she confessed, her voice softening. I've spent most of my life doing what I had to do to survive. Luxury, stability, always felt like someone else's life. Ryan listened, absorbing her words. Her world, so different, yet her truth resonated deeply. Ever wonder if there's more to life than just surviving? Ryan asked, a genuine curiosity in his voice. Something beyond everyone else's expectations? Jessica sighed, her gaze drifting to the city lights, as distant as her own dreams. Maybe. I've dreamed of it. But reality always pulls me back. Love, happiness, always felt like luxuries I couldn't afford. Her words resonated deeply within Ryan. He saw in Jessica a strength, a resilience, a raw honesty that made him question everything. A sudden, fierce protectiveness welled up within him, not because she was fragile, but because she deserved so much more. Jessica, Ryan said, his voice trembling slightly, I need you to know, to me, you're not just someone I hired. You're the person who reminded me what it feels like to feel, to want something real, something money can't buy. Jessica looked at him, surprise and a flicker of hope in her eyes. Ryan, she whispered, her voice catching. I wasn't expecting that. Ryan took a step closer, his hand reaching towards hers, hesitating just before touching. I wasn't expecting to feel this way either, he admitted, his voice raw. But here we are. Jessica remained silent, the weight of his words. the shift between them pressing down. The line between pretense and reality was dissolving, and what began as a lie was morphing into something terrifyingly, exhilaratingly real. As Ryan and Jessica entered the opulent event hall, the air crackled with unspoken tension. This time, however, it was different. Jessica's eyes held a distant look, each step beside Ryan pushing her closer to a truth she wasn't sure she could face. The words exchanged on the balcony hung heavy in the air, changing everything, yet leaving her uncertain how to navigate this new terrain. Ryan, too, was on edge, more restless than usual. Jessica's vulnerability haunted him. Every honest word she'd spoken had chipped away at his carefully constructed facade, leaving him exposed and raw. At the peak of the evening, when a key investor proposed Jessica give a speech, a wave of alarm washed over Ryan. He tried to intervene, but it was too late. All eyes were on Jessica, expecting her to charm the room as she had before. Jessica felt the weight of expectation, but something inside her snapped. She took a deep breath, and instead of delivering the polished, rehearsed performance, a rebellious impulse surged within her. "I need to be honest," she began, her voice trembling yet firm, "because I can't keep pretending this is real, just a role." A hush descended upon the room, every guest's gaze fixed on Jessica, hanging on her every word. Ryan stood frozen, his heart pounding, a sense of impending disaster washing over him. He knew something monumental was about to unfold, but he was powerless to stop it. "I took this role because I was desperate," Jessica continued, tears welling in her eyes. "I needed the money more than anything, but what I didn't expect was to find something more, to find someone who, beneath the cold CEO exterior, had a heart that I've come to love." Jessica's confession detonated in the room. A collective gasp swept through the crowd as all heads swiveled towards Ryan. He stood motionless, shock and a profound emotion warring within him. He opened his mouth to speak, but words failed him. She loved him, truly loved him. But before Ryan could react, Robert Mallister, the most influential, most cynical investor, rose from his seat, a sneer twisting his features. "So this was all a charade?" he boomed, his voice echoing through the hall. "You deceived us all, Ryan, and all for a woman you paid to pretend to love you." Ice flooded Ryan's veins. Mallister's eyes burned with betrayal, and he saw the same dawning realization in the faces of the other investors. His carefully laid plan, his desperate attempt to secure their trust, was collapsing in spectacular fashion. "That's not true," Ryan finally managed, his voice strained, reaching out to grasp Jessica's arm, as if anchoring himself to reality. It wasn't a sham. Not like that. But the tide had turned. Mallister advanced, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "Looks like the great Ryan Sterling got played," he mocked, his voice dripping with contempt. "And we were fools to be taken in too. If you can't be honest about something as fundamental as your own life, how can we trust you to lead our investments?" Mallister's words struck like hammer blows, each one shattering Ryan's carefully constructed world. Jessica looked at him, tears streaming down her face. "Ryan, I'm so sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I never wanted it to go this far." Slowly, Ryan released her arm, his hand trembling. In his desperate bid to create a perfect image, he had lost everything that truly mattered. The admiring glances of his partners were now replaced by distrust and disdain. He hadn't just failed to maintain his facade, he had obliterated his career, his reputation. Before he could utter another word, Jessica turned and fled the hall. Ryan followed, finding her standing alone outside, her shoulders slumped in defeat. "Jessica, wait!" he called, desperation lacing his voice. She turned, her eyes pools of pain. "I never wanted it to end like this," he said, his own heart breaking. "I know, Ryan," Jessica replied, her voice choked with emotion. "But maybe it was a mistake from the start. We played with fire and now we're burned." Ryan took a step towards her, but Jessica recoiled, erecting an invisible wall between them. "Goodbye, Ryan," she said, her voice heavy with both love and profound sadness. "I need to go. I need to find the Jessica I was before all this." She turned and walked away, disappearing into the night, leaving Ryan standing alone, the ruins of his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. For the first time, Ryan understood the true meaning of loss. Without Jessica, he was more lost than he ever imagined possible. Ryan felt adrift in a sea of chaos after Jessica's departure. The suffocating silence of the deserted event hall, the sting of public humiliation, the betrayed look in Jessica's eyes as she ran, these moments replayed endlessly in his mind. Control, his constant companion, had vanished, leaving his life shattered beyond recognition. Back in the stark solitude of his penthouse, Ryan stared out at the city skyline that once symbolized his power. The city lights seemed dimmer now, the glittering facade of success hollow and meaningless. For the first time, true loneliness settled in, no longer a refuge, but a stark punishment. Ryan knew his professional life was in tatters. He braced himself for the fallout, the loss of his partner's trust, the threat to his company. But the career blow paled in comparison to the ache of losing Jessica. She was the only authentic element in his fabricated world, and now, the one person who had touched his heart was gone, a casualty of his own deception. Lost in his thoughts, Ryan's phone buzzed. A message from Robert Mallister, the architect of his public shaming. The message was blunt. "We need to discuss your position. You've put us in an untenable situation. Drastic measures will be taken." Ryan hurled the phone onto the couch, frustration and anger surging. Everything was unraveling, and he felt powerless to stop it. Yet, amidst the professional wreckage, the deepest wound was Jessica's absence. He had lost her, not because of contracts or money, but because she had challenged him to be more, and he had failed to rise to the occasion. A fierce resolve hardened within him. He wouldn't let this be the end. Grabbing his keys, Ryan bolted from the penthouse. He needed to find Jessica, to make her understand he was willing to fight for something real, something beyond balance sheets and corporate maneuvering. He didn't know if she'd listen, but he had to try. Meanwhile, Jessica sat in her small apartment, tears staining her cheeks. She berated herself for her foolishness, for letting her heart overrule her head, for believing a man like Ryan Sterling could see her as more than a pawn in his game. Against her better judgment, against her own carefully constructed walls, she had fallen in love, and now she was paying the devastating price. A sharp knock startled her. Opening the door, she found Ryan standing there, rain plastering his hair to his forehead, desperation etched on his face. "Jessica, please let me explain," he pleaded, his voice raw with emotion. "I know everything went wrong, but you have to believe me. What I feel for you is real." Jessica shook her head, tears threatening to spill again. "Real, Ryan? How can I believe that now? After everything, how can I trust anything you say?" Her voice was laced with hurt, with a profound sense of betrayal. Ryan stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "I lost everything tonight, Jessica," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "My reputation, my position, the respect of everyone I thought mattered, but none of it compares to losing you. Nothing is more painful." Jessica looked at him, her heart torn between a desperate yearning to believe and the ingrained fear of further heartbreak. "You say that now, Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "but I'm not safe for you. I'm not part of your world. I never will be." Ryan reached out, his hand cupping her face, a desperate tenderness in his touch. "You are more real to me than anything I've ever known. Please, don't shut me out. Let me show you. Let me prove I can be the man you deserve." Jessica closed her eyes, his touch sending shivers through her, but the weight of the evening, the wreckage of their charade, was too heavy to ignore. "I need time, Ryan," she finally said, her voice shaky. "I need to figure out who I am without all of this. And you need to find out who you are without the masks." She stepped back, creating a chasm between them, a chasm she wasn't sure they could bridge. "Goodbye, Ryan," she whispered, before gently closing the door, leaving him standing alone in the downpour. For the first time in his life, Ryan understood the true sting of defeat, the bitter taste of losing Jessica, a loss far more devastating than any business failure. The weeks that followed were a descent into introspection for Ryan Sterling. He had lost everything he once deemed essential: his reputation, his CEO title, and most agonizingly, Jessica. His opulent life, once a symbol of triumph, now felt like an empty stage, adorned with trophies that held no meaning. Every gilded detail of his penthouse echoed the void Jessica had left behind. At Sterling Tech, the fallout was swift and brutal. Robert Mallister and the investors moved decisively, stripping Ryan of his interim CEO title. He was relegated to the status of a mere shareholder, his opinions now dismissed, his influence evaporated. Yet, amidst the professional wreckage, the deepest wound remained Jessica's absence. He realized that no amount of wealth or power could fill the emptiness she had left. Determined to extract some semblance of meaning from the ashes of his life, Ryan began to withdraw from the glittering world he once inhabited. Social engagements were canceled, parties shunned. He sought solace in causes he had previously ignored, volunteering at homeless shelters, investing in community projects, spaces where his wealth and status were irrelevant. He yearned to reconnect with the humanity Jessica had awakened within him, a part of himself he had buried beneath layers of ambition and pretense. One rain-soaked afternoon, while serving meals at a community shelter, the profound shift in his life became starkly clear. Surrounded by individuals struggling for basic necessities, he confronted a reality he had long shielded himself from. More importantly, he began to glimpse who he was when stripped of his CEO armor, when his identity was no longer defined by his net worth or corporate titles. For the first time, profit margins and stock prices faded into insignificance. His focus narrowed to something far more fundamental, becoming a better man, a man worthy of Jessica's love. Meanwhile, Jessica embarked on her own journey of rediscovery. She returned to her waitressing job at the local cafe, a familiar haven where she felt grounded, free from judgment. Each day was a quiet battle against the persistent ache of Ryan's absence, a conscious effort to rebuild herself, piece by piece. One evening, while closing up the cafe, Jessica stumbled upon a forgotten notebook beneath the counter. Within its pages, she began to pour out her thoughts, her fears, her fragile hopes. She articulated the pain of falling for Ryan, the raw wound of loss, the uncertainty clouding her future. But amidst the despair, she also wrote of her resolve to forge a life authentic to herself, a life unburdened by pretense. A question began to flicker in her mind. Could Ryan truly change? Could he become the man he'd promised to be that rain-soaked night? More importantly, could she relinquish her fear, her ingrained skepticism, and dare to believe in something real again? As she wrote, a nascent spark of hope ignited within her. Perhaps, just perhaps, genuine love could bloom even in a world saturated with deception and masks. But first, she knew she had to heal, to become whole within herself. She wouldn't settle for being half of a complicated story. She yearned to be a complete person, choosing love freely, not out of necessity. Across the city, Ryan stood across the street from the cafe where Jessica worked. He wasn't there to intrude, but to observe, to gauge if he was indeed becoming the man she deserved, even if from a distance. Through the cafe window, he saw her absorbed in writing, a quiet intensity in her posture. A sense of peace settled over him. Words were unnecessary now. All that mattered was the quiet certainty that regardless of the depth of his love, he first needed to earn her trust, to become worthy of her. For the first time, Ryan understood that his greatest challenge wasn't winning Jessica back, but transforming himself into the man she had always seen within him. Jessica sat in her apartment, sorting through her notebook, a tangle of emotions swirling within her. A soft slide beneath her door broke her reverie. An envelope. Her name, penned in a handwriting that sent a jolt through her. Ryan's. Inside, a simple note. I found a place I want to show you. If you're ready to listen, I'll be waiting at the address below. Jessica hesitated, her heart pounding against her ribs, but an undeniable pull, a whisper of hope, urged her forward. Grabbing her keys, she slipped on her coat and stepped out into the night, a mixture of trepidation and anticipation guiding her steps. The address led her to an unassuming community center, bathed in soft, inviting light, clearly undergoing renovations. Children and volunteers painted murals on the walls, laughter echoing through the space. And there, amidst the vibrant chaos, was Ryan, kneeling beside a little girl, guiding her brush as she painted a flower. A genuine smile illuminated his face, a smile Jessica had never witnessed before. Peaceful, unguarded, real. He looked up, his eyes meeting hers, surprise and a profound tenderness softening his features. Jessica, he said, a soft smile gracing his lips. You came. What is this place? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper, taking in the scene around her. This is what I've been working on, Ryan replied, his eyes sparkling with a newfound passion. I invested in this community center, a place for kids, for families who need support, a place where people can find hope, no matter where they come from, no matter who they are. Jessica's gaze swept over the scene, children laughing, volunteers working side by side, a palpable sense of community filling the air. A warmth spread through her, melting the ice around her heart. Ryan was different, transformed. She saw it not just in his words, but in his actions, in the gentle way he interacted with the children, in the quiet purpose radiating from him. He had become the man she had always believed he could be. I did all this because of you, Jessica, Ryan continued, his voice raw with sincerity. You showed me there was more to life than I was seeing, and I don't just want to impress you anymore. I want to build something real with you, something worthy of what we could be, together. Tears welled in Jessica's eyes, tears of joy, of relief, of a hope she had dared not to fully embrace until this moment. "Ryan," she said, her voice thick with emotion, you did this. You became him, the man I always knew you could be." He stepped closer, gently taking her hands in his, a tender smile gracing his lips. "I became this man because you believed in me," he said softly, "even when I didn't believe in myself. And if you'll let me, I want to spend the rest of my life showing you that it was worth believing." Jessica smiled, tears now streaming freely down her face, tears of pure, unadulterated happiness. I think we both became something better," she replied, a soft laugh escaping her lips. "And I'm ready to see how far we can go together." Ryan leaned in, slowly, tentatively, and for the first time, without the weight of a role, without the shadow of a lie, he kissed Jessica. It was a kiss of truth, of forgiveness, of a future built on honesty and love. The children and volunteers erupted in cheers, whistles, spontaneous applause, transforming their intimate moment into a celebration of hope and redemption. Jessica and Ryan pulled apart, laughing, tears mingling with smiles, a shared certainty that everything finally was in its rightful place. Later, as they walked hand in hand through the bustling community center, Ryan turned to Jessica, a playful glint in his eyes. "I have one more thing to show you," he murmured, gently guiding her towards a small room. A sign on the door read, "Jessica Davis, Writing Space." Jessica gasped, surprise and delight flooding her face. What is this?" "I thought you could use this," Ryan said shyly, a hint of nervousness in his voice. "A space to write, to inspire others with your words, just like you inspired me, because you have a gift, Jessica, and the world deserves to hear it." Speechless, Jessica reached out, tracing her name on the sign, then turned to Ryan, her eyes overflowing with love. "Ryan Sterling," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion, "I never thought it was possible to fall in love with you twice." And this time, they both knew. There were no lies, no contracts, no masks, just two people, finally, authentically themselves, ready to face the world, together. Do you think Ryan truly changed for Jessica? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to know what you think. Your participation is very important to us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more stories like this. Thank you for watching.